So the Trump administration recently said that people should stay away from restaurants and bars. And in some parts of the country, restaurants have actually closed down, bars have closed down, or there have been some restrictions put on restaurants. And this is happening in various parts of the country. Now, you can look at this in two different perspectives. You can say, oh, this is terrible. I'm so pissed off. I want to get my, cowboy double cheeseburger with bacon. You want to get your MSG rich stuff. I get it. I understand. Sometimes you got an itch and you want to scratch it. I get it. There's nothing wrong with wanting to go out, once a week, once every 2 weeks or so. There's nothing wrong with that. But you can look at this in a different way, right? And in the other way, it's looking at the situation and saying, something good can come out of this. Something positive can come out of this. So here's the thing. Something positive can come from the fact that you can't stuff your fat ass with takeout. Something good can come out of that. It's very real. And I think that this is actually a positive thing. The coronavirus isn't a positive thing, but it is a positive thing for people not to go out all the time. Because one thing that I notice is that people eat out way too much, like way too much. I understand once a week, you go once every 2 weeks or so. I get it. But there are people in America who go out to eat every single day, or almost every single day. They go out at night, they get the urges, they want to inhale Wendy's French fries, and it becomes excessive. It becomes excessive. It becomes way too much. And I want to tell you guys some stories. I want to tell you guys some things from my own experiences. My grandfather on my mother's side was from Mexico, and he loved to cook. He cooked all sorts of things, and I mean like seriously cooked. It wasn't, he wasn't like making ramen or something like that, like rice-a-roni. It was like serious cooking, and it was authentic Mexican cuisine, where everything had to be in a very certain way, in accordance to whatever tradition of cooking he came from the village that he grew up in and back in Mexico. And he would cook this dish called carnitas, and it was a very fattening dish, but it, very, very rich. Basically, it's pork cooked in pork fat for about 4 hours. And then you take some water and you mix it with a little salt and you pour it in the pot and you cook it for another hour. And then you eat it with, beans and rice and all that good stuff. But he cooked a lot. And he lived a long life. He died at the age of 90. He lived a long, rich, and prosperous life. And cooking was a part of his ritual. Like, it was a part of his daily ritual, going shopping, coming back home. It was that old school mentality of shopping for what you needed on that day and then coming back home and cooking it. There's something very special, very distinct, almost sacred about cooking, because it unites people together. It really does bring people together. And he cooked. Well, he passed away in the year 2017, and so my parents went to his funeral, which means that they had to see the relatives. And in a traditional Mexican funeral, much like other Latin American funerals, people cook during the wake, right? People will cook after the funeral, and they will usually cook up a pretty big barbecue, big feast. And it's a way to say, yes, it's very sad that this person passed on, but we can find joy in cooking and being together. And my father came back from the funeral and staying with the relatives for about 2 weeks. And he told me, he said, they don't cook. The younger generation does not cook. My grandfather was the last person in the family, in the immediate family, who seriously cooked. Everyone else, his children, their children, they don't cook. And my father told me they literally went out every single day, all the time. They went out, didn't cook. And I went to Italy late last year. I was there from September all the way to early October, so almost 3 weeks. And I met with relatives when I was there. Nobody cooks. Like, people, you don't cook. A couple of them will, they know some dishes here and there, but they don't like to cook. When I go to the grocery store, I make a habit of watching what other people buy. And one thing I notice is that a lot of people buy pre-made meals. TV dinners, or they'll buy those pre-made salads you get at the grocery store. They get, the meal that has the chicken and the salad next to it, or the vegetables next to it already. You just, pop the chicken in the oven. It's all seasoned for you. And this is extremely popular. I mean, there's a reason why you find this type of stuff in every single grocery store, because it's very popular. In fact, I think it was Business Insider that did an article about the top 8 types of things that Americans buy at grocery stores. And number 1 wasn't meat, nor was it dairy. I was expecting meat or dairy, like milk, to be first place. And it wasn't the case. I was pretty shocked by it. Number 1 was packaged snacks. Dairy, I think, made like the number 3 spot, and then meat was somewhere around there as well. You would think like the number 1 things you buy in the grocery store would be dairy and meat. And when I go outside and take a walk with my dog, one thing that I will do is look at people's backyards. I don't go peeking, over the fence or anything like that, but you can see people's backyards as you walk past the house. And one thing I notice is that nobody gardens. Nobody gardens. And if you tell people that they should garden, they say, well, that sounds like too much work. That sounds like too much work. But yet they come back home and they, watch football for 3 hours or something like that. They can't go outside, dig up some dirt, throw some seeds and water it. But they also don't mind spending lots of money on their lawns, because Americans are obsessed with their lawns. In fact, in American neighborhoods, they give rewards out. They'll give they'll give out a first place position to the house that has the best lawn. And they'll do this every year. I've seen this sort of thing before, where the house that gets the best lawn gets first place, and you get some sort of a sign or some sort of a notice that, hey, your lawn made it to number 1. And it's like, we're focusing on lawns, but we're not focusing on actually growing food. And I'm not saying you should grow a farm in your backyard or anything, but you should grow something, right? Collards, kale, eggplant. Eggplant's really easy to grow, a lot easier than tomatoes. Chili peppers, herbs like mint, parsley, dill, celery. Pretty simple stuff to grow, and you cut it and it grows. You cut it and it grows. I like to grow things that you can cut it and it grows back. And sometimes it'll last like that for years. Like collards and kale, you can harvest the leaves for over 2 years. No joke. I've experienced this before. I like to grow things like that. Mint will last for years in your garden. And eventually it'll go to flower, but those flowers eventually become seeds, and the mints will self-seed, and then you have baby mints, and you water it and you let it grow and it grows back. Of course, you got to add your fertilizer and give some sort of nutrition back to the soil so that I can continue to grow, but still, you're going to get continuous mint for years. Parsley will last for years. Celery, you can cut celery and it grows back. And celery will last in really cold temperatures. Swiss chard can survive in really, really cold temperatures, and you can harvest it and it grows back. And I love telling people that they should garden because I think everybody should garden. When I was in Italy, one thing I noticed about Italians is that they love to garden. Italians love to garden. And I remember going to a monastery in a small village in northern Italy called Pietrarubia, which in English literally means red rock. And it had the most beautiful garden I've ever seen. Like seriously, this monastery had the most beautiful garden. And I had the pleasure of hanging out with the monastery gardener. And she had some really, really good knowledge on gardening because she came from a family of gardeners. Her father was a gardener, and her father started a huge garden nursery in northern Italy. And Italians garden. In fact, they garden so much you'll find wild edible fruit on the side of the road. You'll find giant pomegranate trees growing on the side of the road. You'll find giant fig trees growing on the side of the road, full of fruit. Why? Because so many people grow fruit, they grow vegetables, that these fruits seed. Like when you have a pomegranate and you let some of those pomegranates dry out on the branch, or if you throw some pomegranates in your compost and the seed dries out, that's if it has seed, those seeds will eventually germinate, and you will find pomegranates growing in different parts of your backyard. You're like, how did that get there? Oh, you put some pomegranate in the compost, or maybe a bird ate some of it and then it dropped on the, in front of the yard somewhere. So you see that all throughout Italy. In Italy, you'll find pomegranates, and figs and dandelions and all the sorts of things. There is beauty in gardening, and there is beauty in cooking. And if we're going to be looking for something positive in the fact that governments are telling people to stay home and not go to restaurants or go to bars, and if we're going to find something positive in the existence of self-distancing, keeping your distance away from people and isolating yourself, it might as well be in that. It might as well be in cooking, home cooking, and also gardening and starting a garden if you haven't done it already. There's one thing that we can learn from the Italians, and that is that they know how to be happy even in isolation. Americans kind of freak out because, for years we've been watching movies like Mad Max or Waterworld or The Book of Eli or something like that. Or we play video games like, Metro Exodus. Yeah, that's me. But you can find joy in isolation, and you can even find community in people living around you. And in Italy, the government has forced the people to stay home. And when you want to even go to the grocery store, which the government is allowing as a limit, they're saying, you can't leave your house, but they give exceptions. And one of the exceptions is going to the grocery store. And if you want to go to the grocery store, you have to sign a form. You got to put your name, the date, the time you're leaving, and all that. And so they're putting restrictions even on going to the grocery store, even if that is an exception. And people are living in their apartments, isolating themselves, but they still find joy. And there are all these videos on YouTube of people in Italy singing from their balconies, showing that even in isolation, people can find community and people can find happiness. So if there's one positive thing that we can extract from this whole situation, that is that being in isolation, we force ourselves to cook at home and to garden. And we can find joy in that. Anyway, hope you guys have enjoyed this message. Hope you guys have learned something from this message. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.